Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Sin and Tonic. Today's story is that of Guy Heinze. This one is truly unbelieve. Let's go. Sin and Tonic! Hello my loves, how are we all? I hope you had a lovely Christmas break, festivities, New Year, New Year's Day. I don't like New Year. Do I? I always feel like melancholy and a bit crappy with it. But I actually don't feel too bad today. I feel all right. And I thought the perfect thing to do would be to come here, up the shed with you guys, have a chat, talk about true crime, and start the year as I mean to go on. I don't know why I'm sitting weird. I don't know, it feels like I haven't been in the shed for a long time. Was it 2 weeks or was it 3? I think it was only 2. I don't know. Everyone caught a cold over Christmas, and I've got that really annoying thing. Do you ever get it? Like in the corners of your mouth when it goes really sore and red and dry, and it's like really dry and sore. So I'm just trying to like not open my mouth too much. Good one. Today's case takes us to Brunswick, Georgia, in the US of A. There are so many parts in this case where I'm just mind blown. It's that thing where it's like a debate of someone's innocence or not. I can only see it one way. And you can tell me if you agree. And if you don't, let me know why, because my brain like searches for the other side of it to be like, well, how could this have unfolded in the way that they suggest? It's one of those. It's like White House Farm murders, and I went down such a rabbit hole with that, like such a serious rabbit hole. And also I had to stop myself researching so much more deeply into this one because there is a lot of suggestion of corruption within the police department in Brunswick and things like that, and it's just I wouldn't even know where to start. But also I just thought, okay, I need to stop, because otherwise my entire Christmas break is going to be me looking into the disruption. What's it called? What's the word? I literally just said it. It's not disruption. Corruption. We will get there. Without further ado, let's dive on into this sort of, it's almost conspiracy level, in some places, I think. Wow. On the 29th of August in 2009, at 8:15 in the morning, somebody called Margaret Orlinsky makes a 911 phone call to the police to say that there is just commotion and chaos at her neighbour's trailer. Guy Heinze Jr., he lived at this trailer and he had returned home in the morning at about 8 o'clock. He had arrived home to something just horrific. He was confronted with a really horrifically bloody scene, and there were 8 members of his family in that trailer that night. 8 members of his family. And every single one of those members of his family had been murdered in a really gruesome way. He's entered into his home, this trailer. It's not huge either, so it's not, it's quite a confined space. And then to walk in and find 8 of your family members horrifically murdered. From the descriptions that I've read and from the autopsy reports, it would have just been really grim for him to have seen. So a lot of the injuries were concentrated on the head neck area, and to the point where I believe most of the victims were unrecognisable. As he walks through the trailer I don't even know what the word is for that sort of situation when you walk into something like that. I don't know. Traumatic just seems a teeny tiny word. But as he walks through in this traumatised state, I imagine, I believe the first body he finds is his father. And then as he continues to go through the trailer, he just sees everybody's body. In one of the rooms, he notices that there is a shotgun on the floor, so he picks that up. It is important that I mention that he did pick up the shotgun, and he then went and put it in the boot of his car. So that would kind of suggest that there was something iffy about the shotgun maybe, and that he was like, oh, I better move that. Not sure. Anyway, so he moved the shotgun, he took that outside. He also, in the same room, I believe, picked up one of his cousin's mobile phones, and he tried to dial 911 himself, and he couldn't do it. Was he just in utter panic and he couldn't do it? I know that I've been in situations sadly like that myself, where your brain just disengages and it just woohoo, because you are in so much panic, and it does make you go blind. It makes you incredibly like stupid. It does, like this. It's like blind panic. They call it that. I have sadly been in that situation twice in my life where I've had utter blind panic, and it is scary because you're like, I can't function. So I can fully see how that would be a thing, especially with what he just walked into. Another possibility is that he was just too high. Like he was, and that mixed in with what you've just walked into could also make you just unable to do something very simple like using a phone. After he has walked into this wow, that is when he's screamed and shouted for help, and that's when his neighbour has rung 911. Let's talk about the people that were in the trailer, the family members. I have a handy graphic that I'm going to put up because I was a bit like, say who, what? When I was reading the names and the connections to people and stuff like that. So I will share it with you and we'll talk through it together. I love a graphic, don't you? Oh, wibble wobble. Oh, not this graphic. So let's begin with Guy Heinze Sr. That is Guy Heinze Jr.'s dad. So Guy Sr. is 45 years old. Guy Jr. is 22 at the time of our story. Then there is Guy Jr.'s uncle, which is Russell Toller. I'm going to say Toller Sr. He's 44. He is half sibling with Guy Sr. I'm going to leave this graphic up for a while because I had to look at it a bit and be like, right, okie dokes. There is also a sister, Brenda Fallaghan, and she's 49. In that trailer, Russell Sr. had his 4 children: Chrissy Toller, Russell Jr. Toller, Michael Toller, and Michelle Toller. Chrissy was 22, Russell Jr. is 20, Michael is 19, Michelle is 15. Chrissy's boyfriend was also in the trailer, that's Joseph West, and he was 30 years old. And Chrissy's son, Byron, who was 3 years old. Michael Toller, 19, Russell's son, one of Russell's sons, he had Down syndrome. Also, just take a moment to have a look at this as well, because I know that not everybody's picture is there. But think about, most of the people here are healthy and able, and there's, no one's geriatric. You've got Guy, 45, Russell, 44, Brenda, 49, Joseph, 30, Chrissy is 22, Russell Jr. is 20. These are all people that are healthy, fit. While Guy's neighbour is calling 911, Guy has gone to his car. He's put in the boot of his car, in the trunk of his car, the shotgun and the mobile phone that he had picked up in the trailer. It was Michelle's mobile phone, so his cousin. He then gets into his car and he's got a marijuana cigarette there from the night before, and he lights that and takes a few puffs of that. He said that he did that to calm himself down. After this, he sort of returns into the trailer, comes out of the trailer, goes into the trailer a couple of times in a distressed manner. And then at one point, which you hear on the call, he's come out of the trailer and said, tell them to hurry up because Michael is still breathing. Michael is still alive. So Michael is 19 and he has Down syndrome. And even though he has been horrifically beaten, he is still alive. And it just wasn't, he didn't notice that before because Michael was actually very still laying on his bed when Guy had first gone into the trailer. When the police arrive, Guy is just in an absolute distressed state. So he's being sick. He's completely lost all colour out of him. And I guess that's a very normal response to finding such a horrific scene. Within hours, the police had decided that Guy was their main suspect and that he was guilty of this crime. Guy, in his distressed state, and also coming down off of drugs because he's been taking drugs all night, he is then taken to the police station and he is questioned there for 14 hours. And I argue whether that is okay. Like, this person clearly has taken, I think he was quite forthright with it. He's taken drugs. Wait until the next day. I don't know whether that's just naive of me and whether they have to sort of talk to that person. But it seemed like very early doors, the police were quite adamant that he had committed this crime, that Guy had done this. I guess because he found the bodies. I don't ever want to find a body in Brunswick, Georgia, by the way, because it's like, whoever smelt it, dealt it. No, thank you. After 14 hours of interview, he's then taken to county jail. He's been charged with possession of substances and tampering with the evidence because he took the shotgun and Michelle's phone out of the trailer, and then he is held in jail. He was held in jail till the 4th of September, and then he was released on bail, and his grandma and his younger brother Tyler, they picked him up. Now, from everything that I've read, Guy and his family were very close-knit. And he was very close with Tyler, his younger brother, who wasn't in the trailer that night. So Grandma and Tyler come to pick him up and they drive him home. He's only been there for 10 minutes before police come and they revoke his bail. They take him back to jail, rhymes, because he is now being charged with the murder of his 8 family members. So it just seems like they really wanted him, didn't they? They really wanted him for this. And then nothing had all fallen into place in the right time. They had to let him go. And then kaboom, whatever happened, happened. And he was then arrested, rearrested, or arrested again for the murder. He then spends 4 years in prison waiting for his trial. 4 years, man. Wow. Let's talk a little bit about Guy. So his childhood sounded to be relatively normal. However, I do believe there was drug use within his family. His mother passed away from an overdose when he was 17 years old. However, his school life and friendship-wise and stuff like that all seemed to be relatively normal. He was friendly, people gravitated towards him, he was funny, people liked him, he always had people around. He was a good boy, he was a good student, and then when he got into 9th grade, he started to sort of hang around with or just make bad choices. He did used to sneak out of school. He started to play truant in that year, 9th grade, and he started to skip school to smoke. When he was 15 years old, he started to dabble in the harder drugs, sadly, and him and some friends decided to go and steal some guns from somebody, and they were going to sell those guns to be able to buy more drugs, and they got caught. And Guy was then sent to a boot camp. I just think these places sound horrific. I'm not going to lie, I just think they sound like, is that how we rehabilitate and change people? I don't know. However, he never, after that, until this incident, he was then never in trouble with the police again. So they sent him to this boot camp to sort of nip his bad behaviour, like, let's stop that, please. And for the most part, that seemed to work, unless you believe that he is guilty of this crime. He was taken to Baxley Wilderness and it closed in 2014. He seemed to then have his life back on track, and then, like I said, his mum passed away when he was 17 from a drug overdose, and it really hit him and Tyler really hard. However, it didn't affect his work and his work ethic, and he carried on working. He worked like Monday to Saturday. He was building houses, and so builder. And he would get up every morning, he would work his days, although it does sound like he was burning candles at both ends, if you like, because his drug and alcohol use went up. So to cope with the loss and the emotions, he was numbing it out. So if he wasn't at work, he was drinking and taking drugs. And that is not a sustainable life, is it? But that is what he was doing at the time. Something to note, although his drug use was going up and he was under the influence a lot, he was never known by family, friends, or by the police to be violent, aggressive, or anything like that in any manner when he was on drugs. Just thought I'd share that. At the time of this case, he hadn't been living at the caravan park, trailer park, for very long. It was called New Hope Mobile Home Park. Say that quick. He hadn't been living there long. He had an apartment himself, but he had then moved into the trailer. His dad, Guy Sr., had a trailer that needed to be moved onto a different plot. So Guy Jr. had moved in. He was just crashing on the couch, and then they were going to move his father's trailer to a plot, and then I believe they were going to live in that one together. There was an awful lot of people in this trailer, so it makes sense that they were going to disperse and spread into another one. Guy said himself it was difficult at times to live with that many people, but they were all family, they'd all known each other for their whole lives, and it was okay. There was no huge tension. Tyler, he has also said there was never like ongoing grudges and difficult things like underlying. He said, it was just very normal. The family they used to go on holiday together. They'd always sort of lived together. So it wasn't odd. There was no huge, like, behind the scenes. There was no skeletons in the closet, if you like. Tyler would say they grew up together. They were always a big part of each other's life, especially so Russell and Guy Jr. They were brothers. And Russell's 4 children, they used to go camping together and things like that. So there wasn't like a big family animosity. I mean, they were living together in a trailer, for goodness sake. Tyler said the only person in that trailer that they didn't know in that manner was Joe, who was Chrissy's boyfriend. He was a relatively new boyfriend on the scene, so they didn't know him that well. Also, Guy, Tyler and Guy Jr., they were all due on that weekend to move the trailer to its plot, his father's trailer, Guy Jr., and they were all going to live together. And they were all really excited about it. And that is why Guy Sr., I keep getting the wrong guys. Oh my goodness. 2 people with the same name. You know what I mean? So Guy Sr., all 3 of them, the son and Guy Sr. and his 2 sons, that is why Guy Jr. had moved into the trailer and was sleeping on the couch, because they were all getting ready to move in together. So it was all happy days. And Tyler has said, why would Guy murder not only this family that he loves, but his only remaining parent, and a parent that he was very excited to move in with that weekend? Why? Why? And the motive is a questionable one. Why did he murder 8 members of his family? Law enforcement would suggest it's almost laughable that Guy committed these heinous murders because of painkillers, because he'd come home at some point in the night and wanted some painkillers, and his uncle Russell had said no, and then he horrifically beat his family to death, all 8 members, for painkillers. And when they searched Guy's car, there was a bottle of painkillers in the car. So he wouldn't have, like that is just a moo. No, that is not the motive. Guy also had access to dealers. He had money in the car. He could have gone and got anything he wanted. So the likelihood that he went back to the trailer and killed everybody over a bottle of painkillers is highly unlikely. And really, other than the fact that Guy found his family members dead, there is no other motive that the police, basically because he found them there and they didn't have any other suspects, is what I suspect. But yeah, so that, there was no real motive given. Like, why did he do this? Painkillers. Good one. Absolutely, really? Okay. Also, because it's just going to annoy me to go through their version of events, but the prosecution, as you can tell, I fall in the camp that he did not do this. But the prosecution gave a timeline of how he could have committed these murders, and it is bonkers. But let's go through the timeline, because if ever, it's actually frightening, this case, because there was nothing physical to put Guy in the trailer at the time of the murders. There is no evidence that places him there at the time of the murders. None. That's frightening, because, spoiler alert, Guy is currently in prison serving a life sentence without parole for these 8 murders. He's in prison. He was convicted by a jury for the murders of his family. And I just find it, please, if there is a really strong, actually, if you look at it this way, it's likely. There is one possibility, which I'll talk to you about at the end, which could, but again, with the timings, No, yeah, that stands up. Anyway, let me go through the timings. Have it all handily here. So excuse me if I'm not like eyeballing you, because there is a lot to it. Let's go to the day before. So between 3 and 5 p.m, Guy and a friend, Zach, have been at a restaurant and they head back to Zach's home. And Zach testifies to this and says that Guy left Zach's place on foot at about 5 p.m. First of all, we've got a witness there. I like it when there is, like evidence, which is something that in this case and trial there was not a lot of. There was a lot of evidence, to suggest maybe this guy didn't do it. Oh, Guy, but not so much the other way. Then, between 5 and 5:30 p.m, Guy makes his way to a shop. He sees his brother Tyler and some friends at the Friendly Express gas station, and they invite Guy to come and chill with them later at the Best Western Motel. And I can only imagine that means take drugs. So, and then so you've got some witnesses there to say that happened. And then at 5:30 to 6 p.m, Guy calls Chrissy from the Friendly Express public phone, asking her if Joe, her boyfriend, will pick him up. They come and pick him up and they arrive at the Friendly Express about half an hour later. And they also have Michelle, so another cousin, and the little boy Byron in the car with them. And they head back to the New Hope mobile home park in the car from that gas station. That's about half an hour in the car. Don't arrive home until 7 o'clock because they make a little stop on the way. They stop at a shop. So between 7 and 9 p.m, Guy is at the trailer with his family and he spends time with them, and then he shaves his head and gets in the shower. So he has a shower. And then Russell Jr., the 20-year-old, he gets a phone call from his brother asking for a favour. Between 9 and 10, Guy goes with Russell Jr. to see Russell's brother. Oh, because that's it. His car is broken down. So they go and they help to fix this car. And then 10 till 10:30, Guy and Russell come back to the trailer park. And on the way they stop off at a corner shop. And then between 10:30 and 11:30, also these times are because he didn't have a phone. So he was guessing based on, but then a lot of it was corroborated by witnesses that were like, oh yeah, I did see him at that time. So between 10:30 and 11:30, Guy goes back to the trailer. He's there for a little while. And then he goes out to meet a girl that he has been chatting with. And he asks Russell, his uncle Russell, if he can borrow Russell's car. And Russell's like, yeah, sure thing. So he borrows Russell's car, but he doesn't end up meeting the girl because I think he'd taken some drugs, and I think he was like, actually, I don't want her to see me like this. Like I'm a bit too high or whatever. So he doesn't meet her. And instead he goes to his dealer and buys some more drugs. At 11:40 p.m. to 11:45, Chrissy and her son Byron and her boyfriend Joe and Michelle, her cousin, are all seen alive on CCTV at a store near Brunswick. So they're still alive at 11:45. Rhymes. Now we are in the next morning. It makes me tired reading all this, honestly. So between midnight and 1:30 in the morning, Guy heads to Barrington Park. Also, again, it's corroborated because he is seen by an acquaintance on his way to Barrington Park. So he's seen then. Before he gets to Barrington Park, though, he's been seen, then he goes past his home again, New Hope Caravan mobile home place. God. He goes there and he decides to get some more drugs from Joe, his cousin's boyfriend. So he stops off home basically and gets some drugs out of the window of the trailer. Apparently Joe deals out of the window. So he does that, gets some, and then he drives. This is all what Guy says that he did that evening. But like I say, there were many witnesses along the way to sort of go, yeah, he was there, he did do this. Obviously Joe can't corroborate because Joe was murdered, but yeah, so this is what he says he does. And then he heads to Barrington Park. Based on drive times, he would have arrived between 1:45 a.m. and 2 a.m. At 2:16 a.m, this is crucial, Michelle, his cousin, she makes a phone call to a friend and leaves a voicemail. She is still alive and she is not in any distress at all. She's just making a phone call to a friend. That's at 2:16 a.m. And then between 2:30 and 4 a.m, Guy says that he's parked at Barrington Park by the big oak tree. And the prosecution brought forward a witness, Thomas, to say, he wasn't in the park because Thomas lived at the park. I didn't see him there. But he went to bed at 10 o'clock, like a normal person, Thomas, bless him. And so, yeah, of course you didn't see him because, don't you hate that in trials and things like that? You're just like, well, that works out well, does it? What a pointless witness to call. He went to bed at 10. Of course he's not going to see him. He's asleep. Honestly, I told you, it blows the mind. And then 3:45 a.m, a call is again made from Michelle's phone. The call lasted for 36 seconds. It doesn't say who the phone call is to, but it lasted for 36 seconds. And then again, and this could be distress, like this could be her trying to get some help. But at 3:48, another attempt is made from her phone, partially dialed, and it's a misdialed phone number, which to me does suggest that she is in need of help. And that was at 3:48. Now, to me, that would suggest that that was the time of the attack. That is the time that she was murdered. Between 4 and 5 a.m, Guy makes his way to the Best Western. Do you remember his brother Tyler said to go there and they would hang out? So at this point, between 4 and 5, he's on his way to that motel. He didn't want to go back to the trailer, he said, because it was early in the morning. He didn't want to wake everyone up and he was high. I'm using high. I don't know if that's the right terminology for I don't know the words, but I'm going to just say that. And then between 5 and 6 a.m, Guy arrives at St Simon's Island. Just after 5 a.m, he gets to Tyler's motel door at about 5:30 and he knocks but no one answers. And then he goes to a payphone to call Tyler to say that he's at the motel and then returns to be let in once he's spoken to Tyler. Now at 5:30 a.m, Jonathan Carmichael, what a cool surname, testified that he heard Guy knock on the door 5:30 a.m. and they didn't answer it. And then at 5:36 a.m, Guy is seen on CCTV camera at the Best Western Motel. And then at 5:30 to 6, Jessica Pollard, she testified that she saw Guy come and go twice before dawn, behaving normally with no blood on him. Between 5:45 and 6, Jonathan Carmichael testified that he let Guy into the room a little before 6 a.m. So Guy was at this motel he was definitely seen at 5:30. He was heard at 5:30 being there. Between 6 and 7, Guy and Tyler go for breakfast. The energy that these people have, I know that they are on drugs, but wow. Like just driving around, still awake. They arrive just before 7 a.m. Between 7 and 8, they ordered and ate, and then they returned to the Best Western. Shows that they paid for breakfast. There's a receipt that showed they paid for breakfast at 7:10. Guy dropped Tyler off and then headed back to the New Hope. I'm just going to call it that. Travel time from New Hope, from the motel to New Hope is about 30 minutes. Guy arrived at the New Hope at 8. And then we know the rest because he walks in, he finds everybody, and then the phone call to 911 from his neighbour is at 8:15. So about 1:30 was the last sighting of him until 5:30 in the morning. So we've got between 1:30 in the morning and 5:30. I can't do maths that quickly. 2, 3, 4, 5. That's only 4 hours. That is only 4 hours. We know that at 2:16 in the morning, Michelle was awake, alive, and not in any distress. So let's say that he went home and he began murdering everybody at 2:30 in the morning. 3:30, 4:30, 5:30. That's 3 hours. The drive time is 30 to 35 minutes. So that's 2.5 hours. Am I correct there? Yeah, that's 2.5 hours. The prosecution themselves said it would have taken, am I right? 2 to 3 hours, they said? At least 2 hours to have committed, for one person to have committed those 8 murders, attacks, to at least 2 hours. And I can see that because when you when you hear the autopsy report, there was a lot of damage inflicted. Their reckoning then is that in 2 hours, Guy killed 8 members of his family in a very violent and sustained attack. And then he would have been absolutely covered in blood. He would have been covered in it. And also he would have been absolutely knackered beyond belief, even though they are saying that it was drug fueled. That's what he did. He was like in another world, so he did all of that, but he was on drugs. I know there are situations where that can be the case. It kind of makes you almost a bionic. However, they're saying that he would have murdered everybody, and then he had half an hour to completely clean himself from any trace of blood, get changed, and then, so half an hour, you can imagine that in half an hour, he could have possibly done that, had a very thorough shower and washed everything away. Hello. But then, that gives him just enough time to get to the motel where he was seen by a witness at 5:30. He was there dead on 5:30. All of this is squeezed into this tight timeline. And he's also they never found the murder weapon or weapons. And he's meant to have, well, that is debatable, but he is meant to have hidden all of the clothes that he was wearing and the murder weapon somewhere never to be found again in this time as well. It's just almost unbelievable. If he pulled that off, he either committed the crime in a shorter time frame, which would have been difficult to do, or he had other people with him, which is the other, possibility. The police never mentioned anyone else being involved, right? They never, ever, that is never put forward. It was just Guy on his own. The reason that the prosecution believed that it took so long for one person to do this is because, as an example, Michelle alone, she had 48 separate injuries to her body. 48. So someone has had to inflict that many injuries on that person. That's not quick, is it? That's not a quick thing. It takes time. One of the other family members had 38 or 36 wounds to their body. Guy's dad, his injuries to his skull and his neck were like as if he'd been in a car accident, the autopsy showed. So that's an incredible amount of force. And each member of the family had so many forceful injuries and blows. That is just so much energy for somebody to be expelling over that much time. Also, let's just call into question, shall we? They're in a small, and it's not tiny, but they're in a confined trader. When you have started attacking the first person, there is going to be a ruckus. There's going to be noise. There's going to be movement to the trader. Someone is going to wake up. He didn't carry out this attack silently. Who is he? Jason Bourne, stealth in there. Boom. No one heard a thing. How is that possible? Tell me now, because I just can't see it. How is that possible? It is not possible. Even if he managed to murder 1, maybe 2 people without making a fricking sound, other people were sharing rooms. That is just, it is so unbelievable. It cannot be true. How could he possibly have murdered 8 people without one single person escaping? They weren't tied up. None of them were drugged or tied up. None of them. So they were with it. So it strikes me funny. The autopsy on Russell, I'm not sure which Russell, showed that he fought back. And so he did actually fight back quite hard. And yet there was not a single injury on Guy Jr. Not a single injury. So also that's the other thing, he's meant to have committed this crime without anyone fighting back, but there is proof that somebody did fight back, but they didn't inflict any injury on him. Again, I'm just envisioning somebody from The Matrix or Jason Bourne, something in a film, getting past punches and it's not real. Blood splatter would show that one of the victims was being attacked from both sides. It's just horrific to think about what actually happened to that family. unless Guy was going around one side of the bed and beating someone and then running around the other side, why would you do that? Why? So even the blood is saying that there were more than one person in the caravan trailer. Also, in Brenda's case, there was no blood splatter because a pillow was held over her head. So somebody was holding a pillow over her face and attacking her with the other arm, so you would be led to believe. However, she also had markings on her arm to suggest that she was held down as well. So she was held down and she had a pillow over her head and she was being bludgeoned to death. So that person has how many arms? Guy how was he doing that? Holding her down with his feet? Sitting on her with I don't know, it doesn't work. She was held down and had a pillow over her face and was being bludgeoned to death. There were multiple people in that trailer. There had to be. A forensic consultant actually testified that he believed there had to be at least 5 people attacking the family for this to have been pulled off. And that to me screams of drug cartel in some fashion. There was some blood evidence on the shorts that Guy was wearing that day, like his boxers. But I think they were like cycling shorts, right underneath his clothes. And there was some smudging and blood, I think from 3 people on those trousers, shorts. However, we know that he went into that caravan trailer multiple times. He went in and out. He was trying to find a mobile phone. He was definitely, like, he would have had. I would say he should have had more blood on him, to be honest. And perhaps he did have blood on his hands. And I think it was so it was on those shorts, like he could have scratched his leg and had blood on his hands. Like, there's other ways to explain that he had some blood. I mean, it was a very bloody crime scene. So, yeah. But it was said that blood evidence, the fact that he had a small amount of blood on his shorts, was kind of like that tipped the jury over, and that's why they believed he did it. And the fact that he was on drugs. They were pretty certain that he had committed it. But it did seem like it was an awful lot of stress for them to convict him. The death penalty was taken off of the cards, off of the table for that reason, because there was a lot of so it does sound like they were at odds with each other, but ultimately he was convicted. Even this is just a local woman called Gail Montgomery. She came forward, and there's another rabbit hole to go down as well, which I will talk about now, because so Gail Montgomery, she called in the police, apparently. So she says, why would she lie? I don't know. But she found nunchucks and a hammer covered in blood. And she called the police, and they sent out a police officer, Mike Owens, and he came and collected the evidence, so she says. But the police department say, no, that didn't happen. How can this happen? Right? How can this be a thing? So there's this woman called Gail who says, well, I did. It must be so horrible, like so gaslighting, isn't it? No, that's not real. That didn't happen. What? You would that would drive me nuts. That would drive me nuts. But she says that she found nunchucks and a hammer covered in blood. Yeah, but they were never entered into evidence. And the police, not only that, but they say, no, we didn't. Guy himself has a Facebook page, and he called Guy's Voice. Check it out, and he can talk to people from prison. So he does like live streams and stuff, blows the mind. And somebody asked him directly, who do you think did it? And he talked about the cartel, and immediately, the minute, I was just like, So Joe keeps coming up, like this guy that the family didn't really know much about, who is now living in their trailer, who is dealing drugs, the Hand. And I might be so wrong here, by the way, and I don't want to cause any offence to Joe's family because he was murdered horrifically, but geez. But Joe had a shrimp boat, I believe. Is this even real, this case? You know, like sometimes I'm just like, I can't believe the words I'm saying. So he had a shrimp boat, and Guy seems to think also, sorry, just to interrupt myself, but people point fingers. So, and we don't know what happened. But he was saying that he believes that Joe was more heavily into the whole drug dealing thing, and that he might have been in a bit too deep, and something to do with the shipment and the shrimp boat and, you know, these people. But doesn't it sound like drug cartel? Whether it was to do with Joe or not, because also Tyler and Guy, but they seem to be, Tyler and Guy seem to, just from what I've read, be drug users and not necessarily drug dealers. Because why on earth would Guy go around to drug dealers to buy drugs if he was dealing himself? I don't think he would need to do that. But there may have been somebody else in the family. So I don't want to pinpoint this on Joe. It feels uncomfortable. But this is not what I think necessarily, but what Guy thinks, that Joe was more into that than they all knew, and that maybe something had gone awry. You know what, like in films and stuff, if drug deals go wrong or drugs go missing, which they can do, they can go missing or they can get stolen as well. And when you watch it like in the films and on the telly and stuff, if their drugs go missing, they will want to teach people a lesson. They do horrific things. I mean, murdering 8 members of a family doesn't feel like such a stretch when you're thinking about drug cartel, does it? That doesn't seem so mad when you think that, when you hear about some of the awful things that they do. And then when you think drug cartel or Guy on his own murdering 8 people in his family, I don't know. What I think blows my mind so incredibly, the evidence to me is, I mean, if on the autopsy you have got the fact that people were held down by their ankles or by their arm, how does one person, how did a jury have that evidence? And this is what I mean when I questioned myself, because I was like, did this all go, because sometimes some evidence doesn't go into court. That blows my mind too, because you're like, well, if they saw that, surely, like what? How could they have seen evidence? How can you see evidence that says this person was restrained by their ankles by somebody, but they were also bludgeoned to death, and we are saying that this one person did it? Can you believe it? Wouldn't you, like, have you got to be something? Is that working? Because if I went into a deliberation room, and this might be what happened with that person that had to leave, because if I went into a deliberation room and I was like, right, okay, well, there's no physical evidence that this person was there at the time of the murder. All we have is the fact that he touched a gun, he moved a gun, which was proven not to be the murder weapon, I believe. So he's taken that gun and a mobile phone. Right, that's not conclusive evidence that he's done anything. There's no hard evidence that this person committed the crime. And the actual evidence just says that more than one person was there. But we're going to convict him anyway. Oh my God. The caveat to all of what I think is that between 2:30 and 5:30, effectively, Guy is not accounted for. So he had 3 hours. 3 hours. 4, because he was seen at 1:30-ish. You know, sometimes when people lie, I'm not saying this is true either, but I'm just throwing it out there because my brain does this. When I read cases that are like, oh, what kind of, how did that work? This is what my brain does. Okay, this is why I had to stop researching. He says himself he went back to the New Hope to get drugs from Joe. Sometimes when people are lying, they will put in a very small truth into that lie. Putting a small truth into a lie makes you feel better about lying. So he very well could have been back at the caravan park from around 1:30, 2:00, 2ish. He could have been there from about 2:00. 3, 4, 5, 5:30. So that gives him 3 hours, because he needs his half an hour travel time to when he's got a witness at 5:30. So that gives 3 hours where he could have been at the trailer park. If he was involved in this crime with other people, because I strongly, strongly believe that that one person did not do this, but he could have been there from 2:00. That phone call at 2:16 from Michelle was not a distress call. So from 2:16 to 5:00, if a group of people committed those murders, there is every possibility that he could have committed that crime with other people. It wouldn't have taken 2 hours if there were 5 people there. It wouldn't have taken that long. It would have taken less time. So he could have been involved in it. He could have been involved. He could have been one of those members. And if there were more than one person there, then he would have been able to commit the crime with other people, get himself completely clean, dispose of the murder weapons, dispose of his clothes in a way that they wouldn't be found, and then have plenty of time to get to where he was seen at 5:30. I'm not saying that that happened, but I'm just saying that that is a possibility. He could have been one of the members of the group that murdered his family. I don't see why. I don't see why he would be, because, like I say, I can't see a strong motive for him to do it. And from everything that I read and researched and that I've heard from his family members that have survived, will you stop knocking? Honestly, doing my head. It just sounds like he was very close with his family and that he was just pootling along in his life and that he was excited to go and live with his dad. All of this, it just sounds like, and him taking all those drugs that night, it just sounds like that was all normal behaviour for him. So I don't see a motive for him to be a part of it. But just to be devil's advocate, he could have been part of a team that did do it. If there were more than one person, if there was English, more than one person, he could have been one of those people, couldn't he? And it would have all happened a lot quicker, and then, it gives a lot more time for that timeline to happen. And perhaps, again, I'm just playing devil's advocate, but if the police knew or strongly felt that he was one of the members, maybe they just think that, maybe they were like, right, well, we're not going to get anybody else, but we've got him. Again, what would be their thinking behind that, though? How would they so sure that he was one of the members that committed the crime? It more, to me, sounds like somebody in the police department trying to cover up for a bigger operation. That's just my opinion, though. That is just my opinion. Don't come for me. Anyhow, it's one of those where I'm like, have I said everything that I need to say? Have I said everything I need to say? Let's just have a little final word about the victims in the trailer. Let's wrap up and end with that, because we've spoken a lot about Guy and the case, but I just thought, let's read a little bit about what was written about them. So we had Russell Toller Sr., sorry if I'm saying that wrong. People described him as very humble and hardworking. He was also known as Rusty. He was 44. A long-time friend of his said that he always tried to find the good in people. Chrissy, one of his children, was 22, and she had a bit of a troubled life, and she had quite a lot of run-ins with the law. She really seemed to just get into trouble after trouble after trouble, and her taste in men, obviously, as well. Like her son Byron, he was named after his dad, who was called Byron, and he ended up serving a prison sentence for like 20 years. And then she met Joe, who was dealing drugs, and it just seems like she just could never really hold on to anything solid and make good choices. Byron, her son, do you remember he was 3 years old? So there were 9 people that were attacked, 8 died. Byron was the sole survivor. So the 3-year-old boy survived, but he was left incredibly brain damaged. It's really sad. Russell Jr., he was 20. He was said to be just like his dad. So he was hardworking. He was kind to people. He was like he had a strong work ethic. He was described as good people. Michael, who was Rusty's other son, 19, he had Down syndrome. He was described by his teacher as just the most wonderful human being, and people were so distraught when they found out what had happened to Michael. He had survived heartbreakingly, because he must have been, hopefully he was unaware and unconscious, but he had survived the initial attack and until 8 o'clock in the morning when he was found. So he was still alive, but he did pass away the following day. I hope he wasn't in pain. Michelle, who was the other sibling, Rusty's other daughter, she was described as having a very big heart. She was very, very lovely. She will be really remembered at the school. She liked to fish, and she did that with her dad, Rusty, and she really enjoyed doing that. Guy Sr. was described as having had a rough start in life, but he was a very generous and very kind person and would do anything for anybody. Again, he was known for his work ethic, and he would get up early and go to bed early and stuff like that. Brenda was known as a very good, nice lady. She was in a wheelchair after suffering a stroke, and lots of people had just lovely things to say about the family. Chrissy seemed to be very troubled and have run-ins with the law, and it would seem that Guy and Tyler had their time as well. I think everybody, and Rusty and Guy Sr. seemed to have had a rough start, and also to have had a bit of trouble when they were younger with the police and things like that. But it seemed like they were just very genuine, kind, decent people. I couldn't find much about Joe West other than that he went to prison for drug. Let me read it. He was found guilty, pleaded guilty to possession of cocaine, and sentenced in 2000 to 5 years of probation, and he had fines and things like that. He tested positive for drugs in the October of 2002, failed to there was no court record of any jail time. He had other scrapes with the law, forging and cashing checks, theft by receiving stolen property. Sentences ranged from 5 days in jail to probation. But his aunt said he had a good heart. I think there was definitely like run-ins with the law for a lot of people in the family and Joe, but ultimately they were seen as decent, generous, nice people. Yeah, I just wanted to have a little say about something about the victims, because sometimes it can be very heavy on the perpetrator. And also, if you think about it, if you believe that Guy is innocent, well, he's a massive victim in all of this, and Tyler, because they've lost their entire family. Absolutely. And if Guy is innocent, he is in prison for the rest of his life. And what a traumatic event to have happened to him. When he walked in, he found his family like that, and you just have to live with that. So yeah, I mean, what a case, guys, what a case. Absolutely blew my mind. Tell me what you think about it, because honestly, like, I read so many things and my brain was sort of ticking over everything, like, oh my gosh, like, what if this, what if that, imagine this, imagine that. It was really helpful that there was such a timeline of events where Guy was seen and there were witnesses and things like that. So it was like you can piece together and sort of work out and think, right, well, is it even a possibility? But even with those things, even with that timeline, even with witnesses, even with autopsy results that say that people were held down and, and a blood splatter that was like this way and that way, so there were more than one, all of that, and still he was convicted. And that is why I find this case actually terrifying. I am actually terrified of it, because how can that happen? And he was put in prison because I thought there had to be no reasonable doubt. Is it very, like, is that the case here? Don't think so. Anyhow, I'm gonna have to leave it there for you today, because I'm desperately needing a wee. My leg has gone numb, not because I need a wee, but because I think I've maybe I found this one a bit tense. Like, oh, and another thing. Oh dear. Anyway, please go over to Guy's Voice on Facebook and check it out if you wish. I hope you had a lovely Christmas time, festive period, if you celebrate it. And, well, even if you don't, I hope it was still a nice time. And, yeah, I must admit, I'm just glad that I've come into the new year without, this deep... I normally just feel so awful and just filled with dread, and I don't feel like that today. I didn't feel like it yesterday particularly, and I don't feel like it today. I just pretend it doesn't happen and hope that I can slide through and then get back to sort of normality. I always find this time of year a bit weird, but I really particularly don't like New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. Really don't. So, yeah, but I don't feel as horrific as I normally do, so that's a win. And I was like, I'm definitely going up the shed and doing something that I love, because that's a good sort of start to the new year. Can't even pinpoint what I hate about it. Passing of time, maybe. I don't know, I just don't like it. Don't like it. Don't dwell on it, Sophie, because you might give yourself a dread. Anyhow, I'm so happy to say that I started my new year with you guys. That has made me really happy. So thank you so much. And I will be back next week. We are going to just carry on as usual. We're going to go back in every Friday. Boom. I'm going to try my best not to miss any, because I definitely feel like it brings me peace and joy to come up the shed and be with you all. So I'm going to carry on. Start as I mean to go on. Boom. Here with you. Let's go. 2024. The year of the sinners. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Sin and Tonic. Hope you can join me next week for another grim story and a glass or a vase or a jar of water, to be honest. Don't need any alcoholic beverages until next week. Have a beautiful weekend. I will see you all soon. Bye.